Dear Aunt Flo is a podcast about bad periods, and I'm your host, Elisa Michelle. Every month, we'll dive deep into my own vagina monologues as I discuss my journey with endometriosis and share stories that we wish someone would have warned us about sooner. I am your new period BFF, so let's get comfortable speaking about our cycles. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Dear Aunt Flo. Wow, this is our last one for 2024. I cannot believe how fast this year went by. It flew. I started this podcast in January. It is now December. This is episode 14. I wanted 15 episodes to even out the year, odd out the year, however you want to say it. But life be life in. So here we are, episode 14. And also I'm adding some new things to this channel next year. I'll talk about that more in this episode. But in the meantime, make sure that you subscribe if you are watching me on YouTube at Elisa_Michelle. If you are listening and following on Apple or Spotify podcasts, Dear Aunt Flo, and you can follow us on IG at dearauntflo.pod. I know a lot of different names there, but it is what it is. And I didn't want to lose my Elisa Michelle handle on YouTube, and it's just too much work to switch the handle and the associated email and then all the videos that I've already made. So this is what it is, okay? So if you're on YouTube and you're watching, subscribe at Elisa_Michelle. Comment, share, interact with me on there. And if you are listening, follow me along at Apple Podcasts or Spotify Podcasts at Dear Aunt Flo. Yes, I think that's correct. And then, on IG, dearauntflo.pod. So we moving, we grooving, and my little thing just came apart. Okay. We're moving, we're grooving, and that's what it is. Wow. This is a topic that I have wanted to avoid bringing up on the podcast, mostly because it's personal to not just me, but to my husband as well. It's our life, together as one. But I also recognize the importance of sharing your journey, because you literally never know what someone else is going through or what they're experiencing, and how your story could help or how your story could aid or add to, or, whatever the case. And even if it's just a little bit. So I've learned a lot through sharing and starting this podcast from friends that I had no idea were experiencing painful or prolonged periods, or strangers that I have yet to meet who were eager to swap and share war stories. So as I share this final episode of 2024, consider all trigger warnings announced, as this will discuss infertility and what surrounds that. So today's episode is going to be about my journey to pregnancy. Oh, so scary. It's gonna get vulnerable here, and that is what it is. But first, we gotta start with a letter to Aunt Flo. So, Dear Aunt Flo, look, sis, I'm too through with you, but I'm still rooting for you. We had a small procedure that I pray will give us some clear answers as we move forward. But my biggest ask is that you just stop bleeding. 1 week a month will do. I don't need you around every day. Okay, thanks. Sincerely fed up, Elisa Michelle. See, this is why I can't get rid of the handle on YouTube, because it's my name. I don't want to lose my name. Anyway, I've been debating where to begin with this story, and I think I'll start from childhood because doesn't it always start from there? There was one summer that I had to babysit, and I think I was in like middle school or something, but the child that I had to watch was so spoiled, like a spoiled brat, so annoying. And I vowed that I would never have children. Mistake number one. That one experience sealed the deal for me. And it wasn't until I met my now husband that I changed my mind. Like, not even my precious nieces and nephews could do it for me. It wasn't as if my husband and I were in college talking about kids and family and marriage and futures, but it was the way that he loved his nieces that hooked me. He had such care and attention and patience with them. And I thought to myself, if I have that kind of support, like maybe it can't be all that bad. That's wild, right? Then I turned into an over easy and then straight yolk in the past few years. When all the issues started with my period, that probably scared me straight and made me realize that I might have issues getting pregnant, which never occurred to me as I was growing up. I just figured people got married and had kids, and that was the way of the world. I wasn't aware that people may have issues getting pregnant. I mean, hello, 16 and pregnant was on TV. Like, I knew that wasn't going to be my story, and my parents made that abundantly clear, but I had no idea I'd be here at 35, almost 36, wondering why my own body is working against me. So I honestly probably need to work on not feeling like I'm being punished for saying that I never wanted kids to begin with. But I mean, like, what did I know that early in life? And I do know that my God is not in the business of punishment. So yeah, I'm sure I'll work that out in therapy one day. But for now, like, that's where I am. So until then, I'd like to start thinking about what I can do in the meantime, right? So I recently had a GYN appointment. It was my annual appointment, routine as necessary. And it was with a nurse practitioner. So apparently when you do your annuals, like your routine wellness, well care, what do they call them? Yeah, well care appointments or something like that. You don't see your regular doctor because they're too busy for such menial appointments. So you get a nurse practitioner. I was like, okay, whatever. Sure. Because otherwise I'd have to wait until well into 2025 to get an appointment. Or I'd have to pay for the appointment because it would have to be a regular, like a specialty appointment and not an annual wellness care appointment. This nurse practitioner came in guns blazing. Like, what? So I was pleasantly surprised. She did the exam as normal, but we also talked through my options and what needed to be followed up on because, honey, she read my charts. She knew my history. Like, what? And one thing we discussed was having an HSG procedure. So an HSG is a hysterosalpingogram. I had to learn how to say this word a million times before I came up on here in these streets to say this word. But yes, an HSG is a hysterosalpingogram, and they essentially shoot like a contrast fluid that is released into your fallopian tubes to see if there are any blockages. So they take X-ray images of your uterus. They place a speculum, just like you're having a pap smear. They place a speculum inside your vagina. They sanitize your cervix area. They insert a catheter, inflate a balloon, and then release a dye. That dye just shoots right through, or it doesn't. So they perform this procedure between days 8 and 11 of your cycle. And then when I initially went in for the appointment, I was still on my period. And this was like day 9. So they rescheduled me for a few days later, which ended up being like day 13. So they said as long as it's within a 14-day period, I'm good. But since I was still bleeding for that initial appointment, the first assistant just kept saying, like, because I'm bleeding, it may make things worse. it may make my endometriosis worse. And I said, what does that mean? Because worse can mean a lot of things. Will I be in extreme pain? Will there be more excessive bleeding? Because I'm already bleeding. So like, if there's more bleeding, then I'm used to that. If there's more pain, I don't want that because I'm past the pain days. I don't want to go back to pain. So what do you mean by worse? And she couldn't give me an answer. She just said it made me think worse. Insert blank stare here because me and my husband were like, okay, what does that mean? My husband Googled, because that's what we have to do in this day and age, find the answers for ourselves. So my husband Googled that bleeding may just impact the clarity of the test, of the procedure, of the x-ray, and she couldn't explain that to us, and I don't understand why. We rescheduled the appointment for the following Monday, and I thank God stopped. My period ended on like that Saturday, which the month before I was just bleeding straight through. Like all of November into December, just leaking away. So I was very grateful that my cycle stopped and I was able to have the rescheduled appointment, if you will. That assistant walked me through the entire process from start to finish. And I asked her about being on your period for the procedure. And she explained the impact of clarity issue that my husband and I had to Google a few days before. And I said, thank you. Like, that's all I need. Like, just if I ask for something, like, give me an explanation. And if you can't give me an explanation, it's okay to just say you don't know and to ask the doctor, like, when I have the chance to speak to the doctor. Like, I don't know is an acceptable answer, but just saying it might make things worse without going into more detail, like, doesn't help my anxiety, for one, or it doesn't help bring, like, clarity and knowledge to the situation at hand. The doctor came in and further explained the whole procedure, and she walked me through the procedure as she was doing it. So I won't have my full results in time for this episode, but I do know that currently the dye easily flowed through one tube and not the other. So I don't want to speculate until I get more information as to what that means. But, it made things make sense. And it also heightened my desire for wanting to beat the odds of getting pregnant naturally. So with endometriosis, you have a higher chance of infertility. And I don't want to be in that. I mean, who does, right? If you want kids, like, who wants to be in that number of odds, right? I want to beat those odds. So, and mostly because, like, life is expensive. Like, why the hell is life so expensive? But, like, if I, for any reason, God forbid, had to go the IVF route or whatever other route, egg freezing, like, that costs a lot of money, and some insurances don't cover that. Mine currently does not cover infertility treatments. So yeah, like, I don't want to be in those odds. I want to beat those odds so that I can naturally conceive a child. With that being said, I mentioned earlier that I was going to be adding some things to this channel, this community next year. And one of those things is that I decided I'm going to start vlogging my journey. So in addition to these monthly podcast episodes, I'm also going to take you along with me to see all of it. The painful cycle weeks, the doctor's appointments, the journey to hopefully getting pregnant, like, and life in general. I have this podcast as an outlet, but I also run a small business, if you don't know that, and everything affects the other. So why not show it all? Like, I am one person, right? I am in all of these different buckets of life, and business, professional, personal, and I want to be able to just show that side, that part of everything, because I think it's important to know how much a woman's cycle affects her everyday life, right? I want to sprinkle in other videos that will allow me the chance to just document this journey. So I want to look back and see how far we've come, what we could have done differently, what other options and opportunities are out there for us, and so on. So I know it's a lot to openly share these kinds of stories. And if it's too much for you, I understand completely. I just pray that my story isn't one of infertility, but of joy and of triumph. And rather than staying in the shadows and not being fully transparent with everything, I want to share my story in hopes to shed light on how common this is for women, to break the barrier of not talking about our bodies, as I do currently when I talk about my period. So it's probably going to be a lot. All of this will mostly be on this channel. I might sprinkle in some clips on social media, but really all I ask is that you give me grace as I learn new things along the way. I'm learning how to vlog. I am learning how to be in front of the camera, how to storytell, edit and research, and all of these things in between. I don't have a fancy camera. I shoot this podcast on my iPhone XR. It is old. It's old considering there's an iPhone 16 now. It's not flip phone old, but it's an old phone. It's an older phone. And I don't know, clarity might not always be great. Picture might not always be great. Sound might not always be great. But if I don't do it now, when is it going to happen, right? I've been putting off doing these type of things for so long, and I don't want to wait anymore. So that's what will be happening for 2025. I will be vlogging. I will still continue to do these monthly podcast episodes. But if you want a deeper dive peek into my life and what's happening here, then follow along. Follow me on YouTube at Elisa_Michelle. And yeah, this is going to be interesting, but I'm ready. I'm ready to see where life takes me. And I know it's not always going to be rainbows and unicorns. There's definitely going to be some elephant graveyards involved, but that's okay, because it's important to show all aspects, all parts of lives, and especially this one. You only get one, and if I can divulge what's happening, I think it will not only help me, but it'll help someone else. And maybe as you're watching this, you've experienced a similar story, and you can give me advice or offer me some semblance of hope. So yes, let's get into this affirmation, and then we will see you in 2025. Okay, I heard this recently on a podcast called Your Favorite Aunties, and she mentioned that a preacher always left her with this quote, and it has never left her, and I appreciated it. So I'm going to share with you, and it's going to be our affirmation for this episode. Okay. God will never mismanage your life. Whew, remember that, because yes, there may be hard times. Yes, there may be obstacles, but every lesson has a purpose, has a reason, and I need to hold fast to that, right? So repeat after me. God will never mismanage my life. I love you. I see you. I hear you. Peace. Hey BFFs, thanks for tuning in to Dear Aunt Flo. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to show support, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts. This will help more period BFFs find our community and add to the conversation. Follow on IG at dearauntflo.pod and let me know what topics you'd like to cover this season. Catch you in the next episode, period.